I'm talking to Peter Schwarz on June 14, 2001 in Austin, Texas.
Peter, I already know the story, at least as it's been reported in magazines, of your background to some degree. I know who your dad was. I read a published story, at least, about how you met Steve Riley on the wagon at Mamu Mardi Gras. And let's get to business, which is more about what I want to talk to you about. Let's start with the Playboys. How did the decision get made that you, and why did the decision get made that you would be the Playboys manager? Because I don't know, did you come in that way, the bass player manager, or did you?
No.
How did that come about?
Well, I guess it's probably how every bass player becomes a manager. It's by default.
Okay.
You know.
Oh, you got to make yourself.
Huge.
You got to make yourself not expendable.
Right. Well, no, but there's these huge errors of omission, negligence, that in any other business would get people fired, but because they're musicians, it gets excused. And so the more that I got involved with the Playboys, just at the musical level, and started to play music with them full time, it became evident that we needed to have a bank account. And so I took Steve in, and we both became signers on a bank account. And then we needed a federal ID number. Things just started snowballing, so that eventually I was clearly managing the band, and I was doing a lot more work than anybody else on the business. Mm-hmm. And so I had to sit down with the guys and have this heart-to-heart about, am I going to be the manager, and if so, I need some resources.
Mm-hmm. There was no one else, I take it, doing that except Catch As Cash Can within the band?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And where was Steve?
I mean,
what year was this? And where was Steve playing at the time? Was he just doing Randall's and around Southwest Louisiana?
Well, it would have been at the beginning of '93, when was the first time that I recorded a whole record with them.
That was their third record, I think. Was that Trace of Time? Yeah.
Yep, Trace of Time, and I sort of did my final festival organizational gig that spring. When I was relieved of that, I went full time with them, and we spent 6 weeks in England that summer.
You're referring to this? You were with the Smithsonian, right?
No, well, earlier I'd done work with Joe Wilson at the NCTA.
At the NCTA, that's right.
But this gig was Festival International in Lafayette.
Okay.
And so I kind of burnt out on the festival thing. At the same time, there were all these gigs, and Steve needed all his help. And he'd just gotten a new drummer, Kevin Dugas, who was adamant about having a bass player in the band, which they hadn't had before. So, not regularly. I mean, I'd played gigs with the Playboys for 2 to 3 years at that point. Like festivals accordion, I'd show up, and because I was playing with Dewey, and Steve was playing with Dewey, Steve would say, play bass for our set. Mm-hmm. So I got to play some of the best and earliest Mamu Playboys gigs, but just as a sit-in bass player. Right. Little did I know. But yeah, at that time they were still mostly doing 3 to 4 Unilots gigs a week. Mm-hmm. And then in the summer there was some higher profile festival work in the Northeast. And all the touring at that time was basically Steve answering his phone and saying, well, send me the plane tickets and drive us around, provide all the equipment we need, and pay us a fee on top of that, and we'll come. Uh-huh. So it was sort of limited, the kind of scope of events that we were dependent on the home promoter.
Okay.
Whoever it was that got the Playboys to go to New York had to come up with 4 gigs and drive them around and find the back line, and so there was a lot of work, and the band didn't venture on its own, really beyond Louisiana, like driving themselves, for instance.
Okay.
Early on, they came to South by Southwest and were just blown away. It was probably in '91, '92.
They were blown away?
Yeah,
By
they
the
just-
ability to
the
penetrate
crowd-
anything?
The crowd was just so good, and
Uh-huh.
the people really ate it up, because that time they were they were four piece, and Steve was sitting down, and so they came off as these new purists, traditionalists.
Right. No bass, right?
Right.
Okay. Now, who would have arranged that? Would Rounder have done that? Because they were on Rounder in '91, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sure Rounder just said, show up in Austin, such and such a date.
Yeah. On their showcase. Yeah. Okay.
And Kevin Barzal, it was his car that pulled the little trailer.
How was the money handled? Was it just split, or was there?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, it was split evenly.
Okay.
And I don't think, I mean, there was expenses taken out for things like gas.
Sure. Yeah, okay, right.
Those were the only expenses.
Right.
No agent.
Right. Okay, so you're handling this stuff because you sort of obviously have some kind of intuitive sense that things might be more organized,
Mhm.
which is really what sounds like it's come down to. We need a bank account. Sounds like that.
Right.
Okay.
Just no prior training specifically in this kind of work. Just being a festival organizer and being into logistics,
Mhm.
organization, a sense of what needed to be done next.
Right. And did they pay you? Did you get a fee? Something over and above your cut?
Trying to think when I started taking a percentage. It was maybe 1997.
Okay. So later
So-
on, yeah.
So I managed the band sort of in a default sort of manner, and we split all the money evenly for probably like 4 years or so before I started taking, before I had this, you gotta sit down with everybody and say, we gotta do this differently or else I'm just gonna crumble.
Yeah. Okay.
And it was shortly after that as well that we, for liability concerns, we set up the band as an LLC.
Okay.
Got our act together in that regard.
Were things still handled equally financially, aside from people's writing and stuff like that, in terms of performance fees and?
Oh yeah. I mean, to this day, the members of Mahou Playboys LLC, they split the money. I mean,
Mhm.
but now, the more they've had some rotation in the bass player role and the guitar role, sometimes they'll just pay a flat fee to the hired guns.
Right.
But the spirit of that splitting evenly started with Dewey.
Mhm.
Dewey felt very strongly about everybody gets an equal cut, and this isn't any one of us owning this business. It's a band, we make music together, let's split it evenly. If you're on stage, you get paid the same as anyone else.
Mhm. Right.
So that was the legacy. And early members of the band, like Kevin Barzal, were very very concerned with the egalitarian aspect of the music. You may be the accordion player, but
Uh-huh.
you know better than me, and
Mhm.
you pay me my equal share, little
Right.
little beep.
That gets fudged a little bit on records, though, because you're not talking about somebody on stage. I mean, how do record royalties they get split between what's called the band, I take it, with other guys paid a fee for their appearance in the studio?
Well, the performance royalties are split evenly.
Yeah.
The guy, with Trace of Time was the first original material that now had writers' royalties,
Right.
and that's when things started being a little bit different. But
Sure. Well, anyway, I don't want to talk all that about how they're. I didn't mean to get too long about how they're paid, but you're credited on. They got all these newsletters on their website, and I was looking through them. I haven't read any of them, but I think in your the one announcing your departure
Mm-hmm.
credited you with getting them out of Louisiana and onto a broader stage. Do you think that's accurate?
No, not entirely.
Did you take it on as a goal, though, whether it was your doing or somebody else's doing? Did you say we got to get onto a broader stage?
I'll say that I had goals to develop us more in Louisiana as well
Uh-huh.
as outside.
Uh-huh.
I think my goals were just to get the consistency of the work
Mhm.
and the income going. So the idea is to combine the higher profile nationally and internationally with, at the same time, and we're one of the few bands from Louisiana that took upon that challenge, was to continue to nurture our home crowd. At the same time we were playing the Philadelphia Folk Festival or something like that.
Right.
So we, through my entire tenure, we tried to do at least one weekend a month in Louisiana. And sometimes in the winter months it was a little bit more. But that was cool because any time that the national gigs didn't come through, we could sort of fall back on the home stuff.
Right.
Now, bridging those two worlds at the same time caused creative pressures when it came to what we were doing on stage and what we were recording. So that was, Beau Soleil doesn't give a shit what the crowd in Louisiana thinks. They play the music that works on the road, because
Uh-huh.
that's where the crowd is. We were trying to do both.
Okay.
So, and for the most part, Zydeco bands,
I'm gonna let it go.
like Buckwheat Zydeco is a good example. He's got a road show that he would do differently if he just played in Louisiana.
Right.
So the crowd, the audience in Louisiana is very demanding. I remember one person, a woman coming up and saying, "Steve, play the Amadee two-step." We just played it 15 minutes ago. So what? I wasn't here yet.
Yeah.
I want my song. I don't care about anybody else in the audience. You play my song or else I'm going to get mad. So, yeah, I could talk at length about the creative development of the band and each new recording and that sort of thing.
Well, it's interesting because the notes I've got here say tension between evolving sound and desire to satisfy bass. So your bass at home,
Yeah.
which is a. Why don't you talk a little? If you, is there that tension? I'm real interested in that and how you get out there and play the Philadelphia Folk Festival while maintaining an identity as a Cajun band. That's what I think is got to be difficult because I would think that. You can say, yeah, we're a great dance band and everybody wants to get up and dance, but there's a point at which I would imagine that even for the folks outside, you can lose what makes you special, what makes them book you as opposed to 500 other, which is your Cajunness.
Yeah.
How does the band think about that tension, or at least somebody in the band, like a manager, think about that tension between?
Constantly.
Okay.
Every
What
day.
are some of the considerations and how do you
mean-
rectify it? Before, as you formulate that, I didn't want to pick that up while someone was on the line, but I got to make sure I don't have a kid with a broken arm or something like
Okay.
that. So, constantly, people talk about that tension between your specialness, your Cajunness, and the need to
Yeah.
get people in Milwaukee or wherever to go to your show.
I think the first thing to sort of base this whole discussion on is that it's a non-trivial question.
Okay.
And it was a question that we had to handle with our audience, not just in Louisiana. In other words, you would expect everybody in Louisiana wants us to play traditional, but we weren't. We were doing a lot of new stuff and evolving and being creatively much wider in our scope because we were playing for people outside Louisiana who wanted that.
Mm-hmm.
But then we go outside Louisiana, and they wanted us to play more traditional a lot of times.
I would think that, and I would
So-
think certainly if you ceased being a Cajun band, you would cease having that specialness as to why we booked the,
Like that first year that Kevin and I were in the band, Kevin Dugas on
Uh-huh.
drums and me on bass, the sound of the band had changed somewhat because Dugas had this more modern Lafayette dance hall backbeat, whereas Chop, he was Mamou drummer to the max. And so suddenly the band has a walk-in bass and this backbeat that creates a smoother like Belton Richard rather than Bullfrog Brothers kind of sound. And people would come up to us in England and they'd say, really enjoyable, but could you please play something a little more authentic? And it's like, well, you're saying Belton Richard is not authentic? So it was, and to us, it was very hard to accept that kind of feedback positively. In other words, we always reacted to that very defensively and like, they don't know what they're talking about. And it just sort of it increased our resolve to continue down the same course. At that time, it was to throw in a Zydeco swing number like Choo Choo Boogie or Tous les temps en temps. Steve had started to pick up the 2 and the 3-row diatonic accordion. So he was getting into Clifton style Zydeco, and so to hear people come up and tell us, we want you to play Tigalo Pomamou, authentic style, one more time, whether it was in Louisiana or it was in England or wherever, was just against our aesthetic. And in a lot of ways, it made us unnaturally resolved towards expanding musically,
Okay.
just out of rebellion.
But you also said there was rebellion. You also said they don't know what they're talking about, which I took to mean that they don't understand that the music was always evolving. It was always changing. They have some, which
Yeah.
is a problem throughout the whole scene. Everybody's got their point in time at which they freeze things.
Right,
That
exactly.
pleases them.
Well, it was clearly naivete, and in England especially, authentic meant playing like a specific record
Right.
that they owned. And to them, that snapshot of a record in 1956 on a November 5th was how the music sounded for an age, and that there's no sense of the dynamics that you have when you live in Louisiana, where music isn't a product, it's a process, and it's just, it changes every day because you don't write it down and you don't do it exactly, and they don't have any sense of that process. So, but another reason why we were digging for to like chart new territory with the music was, I think, because our ability as a group, as musicians working at a professional level and playing that many gigs, and playing gigs where like Steve would use the word, we need a new weapon. Like, he was keyed into what worked for the crowd. And the crowds we loved the most were the ones who hadn't heard the music before and had no preconception of how it was supposed to sound, had no, didn't have that little bit of knowledge that does a lot of damage.
Yeah.
So there were times where we'd get a new crowd and we'd just get to play for them, and we could do whatever we wanted, and certain songs did better than others. And there's songs that really took the crowd over the edge. We thought of them as weapons. Like you have this arsenal of weapons, you put together your show. When do you pull out the weapon to knock them dead and take the show to the next level? And a lot of that pursuit of changing the music and growing and evolving for Steve was I need a killer song at a certain point in the show that really grabs people. And as much, it was also just needing new material to sustain our own interest in music night after night.
Right.
It's an unnatural sort of faster-paced evolution than would happen ordinarily. Like, probably the thing that kept Cajun music evolving at the pace it did was that people only played once or twice a week. You played a Saturday night show or something like that. So half of your show was just remembering how to play it like you did last week.
Yeah.
And then you'd get a little bit more comfortable with throwing some new stuff in. Whereas if you're playing night after night after night, 4-hour gigs, and also, learning what it feels like to play for thousands of people at once, then your sensibilities change a little bit. And the evolution, the pace of the evolution picks up. And that's just what was happening for us. Every time we'd go in to make a record for Rounder, we'd start to feel this like, okay, we're gonna blow the doors off this place with all these new ideas that we have for this traditional idiom.
Well, you talked about then one side of that tension. That's the side of the tension that tells you we want to push the boundaries for our reasons, also because of what we see that the audience really responds to, for audience reasons as well, as opposed to some of those other people. And yet there's the other side of the tension. And it's saying, what do we sell? What makes us so special? There's this need to, I assume, to remain a Cajun band, because otherwise you're just a dance band or a rock band, and you lose something that's marketable, I imagine. I've jotted down a few things here that I said, what do you sell? And I said, these are ways I've seen it as you could define it. You could sell the idea of ethnicity, ethnic music, or traditional music, which is a little different, or Cajun music, or Louisiana music, or dance band music. Do you get where I'm going? Do you think about those things? And
actually, I'll have to say the band thought very little in that perspective. In other words, the way we learned in business school, who is your customer? What business are you in? What is your product? Questions like that we never thought of.
Okay, and yet you stayed a Cajun band, and you're marketed as a Cajun band, so somehow you didn't become just a great dance band. What was the pull toward that? And it might be just what Steve wanted to play, what you all wanted to play, I should say. Steve,
Yeah, I guess. I know that when we got together and we tried to put together our marketing copy, like what was the blurb that was going to go back on the back of the Rounder record?
Right.
Because they always want their 3 or 4 sentence thing on to say what kind of music it is and why they do it.
Did they want it from you as opposed to doing it themselves?
No, they probably did, because we rejected a lot of the cliches that were perpetuated in those kinds of blurbs.
Okay.
So we were enormously frustrated by show after show, looking at the press that was generated, looking at the reviews of our records, and then even Rounder falling into the same trap of kick off your shoes and party down like the Cajuns do, deep from the swamp with gator-laden rhythms.
Right.
Like, we are serious artists, and you're denigrating our music by these cliches of, like, we got webbed feet and we just came out of the bayou or something.
Okay.
It's like, we really felt negatively about that. So when we'd put together, the result was, when we'd put together and had control over our marketing blurbs, and it would end up being these sort of obtuse, impenetrable adjectives, and to tell you the truth, the band is still sort of guilty of this. They're trying to find words to describe the music and avoid the cliches that have been used in the past, and that's a very hard thing to do without it just sounding like nothing. Sounding, offering no information that will help a normal customer or a normal festival promoter or anybody have a sense of really what made us unique.
And therein lies the problem, and where I come back to what I asked you, which I'm not sure you've answered and possibly not been able to answer. It still sounds to me that you want to be able to play whatever you want, and yet you still seem to want, Steve Harley and the Mamou Playboys still seem to want to be a Cajun band. Broadly defined perhaps, but I think, or a Louisiana band.
Mm-hmm.
You still want to tap into some association people have with Cajun identity or Louisiana identity. Is that fair to say?
Oh yes, definitely.
Okay.
Oh yeah, and also, I think there were times when the band felt very strongly about the music being ripped off by bands from outside of Louisiana.
Uh-huh.
That you don't have the authority to play our music,
Mm-hmm.
and you can't do it. You can't hold a candle to us because we're from the heart of Louisiana,
Okay.
and we have the pedigree, we have the lineage.
Uh-huh.
But don't tell us that we have to play just Cajun music.
Right.
We should be able to do what we want to do. It's this classic sort of artist, self-absorbed artist sort of thing,
There still seems to be, I guess, your records and shows. I saw Steve Sunday night at the Continental Club.
Oh,
I went there,
right.
and I knew you were out of town when I didn't see you in the crowd,
Right.
or assumed you were out of town.
Yeah,
But,
so
and they still do
now
a Cajun show. It
Yeah.
panders. That word's coming to me, but I don't mean it in a bad sense. It plays off of the fact that this is a Cajun band,
Mhm.
and most of it's still in French. Not
Yeah.
all of it anymore, but most of it's still in French. So there
Right.
still seems to be some awareness that we are playing this music, and this is our band identity.
Mhm. Well, I would say the thing that's happened in the last couple of years, and it's sort of was the trend in the tail end of my work with the band, and it's certainly gone more in that direction since I left, was that this is the golden goose.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, our Cajun music is our golden egg, and we're not going to kill the goose
Right.
to do the kind of stuff that we want to do. And probably the biggest sort of irrefutable evidence of that was the traditional Cajun record that we did on Swallow.
Uh-huh.
It's like our best-selling record.
Is that right?
And that's the record that has sustained the Louisiana artists, the Louisiana scene for us, for the band. Probably up to this day, that record is the one that people in Louisiana really dig.
Interesting.
And
Are all the sales, or the vast bulk of the sales down there?
oh yeah, I mean,
And it
Floyd
supersedes all around our sales, which are
worldwide
distributed more widely.
for any one title. Yeah.
Right, for anyone. That's what I mean, for any single title.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean, Floyd knew what to do with that record. Nobody distributes in Acadiana better than Floyd. He
Right.
goes to every little mom and pop along the road.
Okay.
And we gave him the exact product that everybody wanted in Louisiana. And and there was also a lot of excitement about a couple of songs on that record that sustained the interest. So yeah, for us, it's definitely been the best record, and that realization, that proof that can't be refuted, is what's helped the band realize there's always got to be a really traditional element to the show, and that there's a place for that. I used to tell people towards the end of when I was working with them, the wider we cast our net, the better the heart, the core of what we do, the Cajun music gets.
Mhm.
Because the fresher it feels to us every show. We do the whole show, two-step waltz,
Yeah.
it gets real stale, not just for us, but for the audience. But when you have that variety, and you come back to the Cajun stuff, damn, it sounds good. So that was kind of our strategy, and that's, I'm sure, what you're thinking now is, with the show today, they start off real traditional.
Yeah.
And with the latest record, they start off real traditional. And the point now is just to try to expand people's belief that a song like Happy Town, you know, like Creole Stomp, is from the same musical lineage as Un Autre Soir d'Ennuyant or something like that. A song that to most casual listeners just sounds like rock and roll.
Right.
Well, where the hell did rock and roll come from?
Did you have a tagline when you were finishing up with the band? If somebody, a promoter who was unfamiliar with you, I don't know how many of those existed in reality if they were talking to you, but how would you describe the band?
Well, I think our last Jazz Fest show that I was there, the quote, the review of the show was, Mamou Playboys aren't just a great Cajun band anymore, they're a great band.
Okay.
You know, so it was that sense of transcending a particular genre, but still being Louisiana.
And is that something that you were comfortable with? Because I asked how you would describe the band as their manager trying to sell them. Somebody said, well, what are you?
Yeah, I was absolutely...
Why do I buy you?
I was absolutely a firm belief in that, and I would passionately argue that point.
Okay. Rooted in Acadiana, but a great band, not just a great Cajun band.
Yeah. And that being much more of an authentic traditional process than artificially freezing one moment, one particular style that happened and was captured in one record, and sticking with that. It's got to be growing or else it's dying.
On that level, you spoke a few moments ago about some resentment sometimes that the band would have to interlopers who come in and play Cajun music and are doing just what you said, maybe freezing it at some point and saying, well, this is Cajun music. You say, what do you know? And in one level, you could translate that by saying that Steve and David could say, anything we play is Cajun music because we're Cajuns.
Yeah. Yeah, it is the ultimate sort of card to play.
Right. If we play it, it's Cajun music, because after all, Cajun music, the word Cajun doesn't define a musical style, it defines a people. Guess what?
Yeah. Well, which is too bad in a way, because, I mean, you see the success of a musical style when it's able to transcend its heritage as a community. Right. In bluegrass, for instance.
Sure.
You know, anybody can play bluegrass now, and except for the certain traditionalist Nazis, be accepted.
Yeah, it still goes on, but it's much more accepted anywhere else, yeah.
No, but I think the thing that we rebelled against was not the bands that were, like, we'd call them like the Yankee Chank bands or something like that, that were religious in their study of, say, Dewey Balfa or someone like that, who owned the records and learned the lyrics and got a little band together and played small gigs in their hometown. Right. It wasn't those bands. It was the hack bands that would throw in jambalaya and throw that on their bio that they're a Cajun band, that they can play any Cajun music you want to hear. And you certainly saw it in nearly every original band that was sort of roots oriented across the United States. Their influences, Cajun would be in there. Yeah. It was just like, how can you sort of co-opt that tradition and say that that's influential to you when it's like a little seasoning that you're throwing in, like a watered down seasoning, like garlic salt instead of garlic cloves. Right.
But clearly there are limits. I mean, you couldn't be doing Cajun music because you're a Cajun, or some of you are Cajuns. If can you lose the accordion? Can you lose the fiddle? There have to be limits, I guess. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, after all,
at some point you're not playing Cajun music as a trademark, I would assume.
Yeah. To me, essential. I mean, a Cajun band is about making. It's like delegating what the accordion does on its own to 5 people. Everything that's in the accordion, sort of delegating it.
Okay.
And magnifying an aspect that already exists in the accordion.
Uh-huh.
In a lot of ways, it's what it is. And so the one thing that only the accordion can do, which is the percussive melody,
Okay.
becomes the one thing the accordionist does on stage. But the left side of the accordion that's got the rhythm, starts to be taken care of by the bass and the drums and
Yeah.
But essentially, a great Cajun band should really have the accordion as a centerpiece, as the lead instrument.
Uh-huh.
I think that's the commitment that you make. Anytime that the accordion just becomes a little spice to add in something that's got at its heart, say a guitar riff or something like that, then in a way it's lost that thing that makes it Cajun. I don't know. I'd have to think about that a little more.
Okay.
It's my new theory of the day.
That's fine. That's fair enough. One thing you mentioned to me that I jotted down because I'd heard it before, and I think I heard it from Ken Irwin with reference to Steve Riley on it, so I'm wondering about its significance. You said back in the days of the earliest Rounder albums, I guess, and I think this was Ken, you both said Steve was still sitting down, and that's standing up.
Right.
Has been represented by both of you as some sort of evolution. What's the significance in that? What's the significance, first of all, in sitting down, as opposed to not sitting down?
Well, it was highly symbolic for Steve to sit down when he started playing in the 80s. Because at that time, contemporary Cajun music was dominated by people like Wayne Toops, who had this very dynamic jumping around thing going on when they were playing the accordion.
Mm-hmm.
And so the symbol of commitment to traditional Cajun music was, I'm going to go back to how it looked in the old days when the accordionist sat down. And so it had a very visual, the indication visually matched with what was going on musically. And it took some years for Steve to realize that as his music was growing, it didn't fit anymore with sitting down. So we got a stool. So we moved to a stool.
Moved from a chair to a stool?
Right.
What, are you less sitting down? All right.
Right.
You're leaning on your ass.
Well, no, it was basically, he wasn't used to using an accordion strap.
Okay, got it.
And the whole place where your hand is and how you play the instrument has changed when you move from using your knee to, man, he'd get excited at certain shows late in the stool period,
Uh-huh.
where he'd play the accordion for a long time without any strap, standing up, like walking,
Wow.
going to the front of the stage. Accordion's not light.
Way, yeah.
Occasion accordion isn't light. So once he started playing the 2 and the 3-row accordion, we had to play with a strap. Then eventually the stool was no longer necessary. But yeah, it's real symbolic of the evolution of the music.
And what I'm hearing in this, what I'm associating it with, and I may be totally misinterpreting you, but what I think when I hear about it is, you've probably been to Marc Savoy's workshop at the jams, and I don't know how often these signs change, but I think he's got all these signs that are anti-performance. Performers get lost, get out of here. If you want to perform, go elsewhere. Is that the idea? That if you're seated, you're just kind of one of the crowd who happens to be playing, you're not elevating yourself, you're not making yourself a visual focal point, you're just providing the music, which is one part of the whole scene. You're not performing.
Well,
You're not a star. You're just...
and I would add that it has everything to do with the accordion as the showboat instrument.
Okay.
It's like the banjo in bluegrass music. It's the motive of a musician who learns the accordion a lot of times is to be the center of attention and to just grab people.
And sitting pulls away from that. Sort of...
Sitting says, okay, I don't need... My playing is what I'm focusing on.
Right.
Rather than the showboat aspect.
Yeah, it also seems to say the dancers are as important as as what they're dancing to in a way, or it can be.
Yeah, Dewey always said to us, he said, pick a couple that you see that you know are good dancers.
Uh-huh.
When you're at a dance, when you're playing a dance, watch them through the night. And if you ever see them struggling, you know something's wrong. And he'd do that. He would the dancers in Cajun music, and certainly in the history of Cajun music's development, have more to do with the evolution of the music. As much to do in some cases as the artists themselves.
Right.
It's great. There's like all that interaction going on. It's a real cultural event.
Becomes harder, I guess, at a festival. Bigger the crowd, it just becomes harder.
It does become harder, but not still. It is important.
And you can still do it.
Certainly at a festival in Louisiana.
Yeah. English, according to articles I've read, was a big deal. It was a big decision.
Mm-hmm.
And that ties into the discussion we had a few minutes ago, suggesting you did have some sense of where your identity, your ace of spades, lay.
Mm-hmm.
Can you describe to me that? Because you were around when the decision to record in England, English came.
Yeah. I think in a way that was more of a painful conflict than the forays into Zydeco.
Uh-huh.
Because anybody who hated us for playing Zydeco, it was clear that it was irrational. It's like they were racist or something.
Okay.
But someone like David, who is passionate about the language, to be told that you're selling out the music by singing in English was a horrible thing,
I've got a utility guy. Oh, he's gone. I thought he was going to ring my bell. It's like a meter reader or a water guy.
Great.
Are you doing okay with talking in time?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
So, yeah, that was a tougher decision. Trying to remember, we had one knockdown, drag-out battle with Barry Onsley after one Festival's Acadienne performance where Steve sang some Clifton stuff in English. And it was the same sort of pattern of feeling insulted and feeling like what right do they have to tell us what we can and can't play.
Mm-hmm.
But it was more sensitive, and there was a much greater threat in our minds that what we were doing was not appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
But it was mostly, I think at that point, driven by just the growth in our musical interests. And a lot of that was Zydeco, and a lot of the Zydeco was in English. And ultimately, I don't think it would have ever been an issue if French had been Steve's first language.
Okay.
But
right.
the reality of it was that it wasn't, and he wasn't. He was understanding the music, understanding the lyrics very well, but intuitively, and based on learning them as songs. So had it been a little bit different process where it had been his first language and been a language that he was speaking regularly,
Right.
I don't think we would have bothered with it.
Well, then he's got his armor on. Because you can't.
Yeah.
No one can question my cred. I can.
Right.
How did his French become ultimately? How is it now? He kind of learned it first through learning his own songs, didn't he? Didn't he have to study his songs to say them almost phonetically at first, right?
Yeah, it's funny. Like for him, it's definitely he learns French songs, but he doesn't speak French. But he understands a lot more French than he thinks he does.
He can't speak it though in a conversation with somebody.
But he has no grammar.
Okay.
So, like, I remember once he tried to ask somebody, like, he tried to start a French conversation because he knew that person could only speak French.
Mm-hmm.
And to get their name, he was like, "Ta nom." ton homme, you know,
Does this mean your name?
Yeah,
It's not
you know,
a
and
question, it's just your name.
and which anybody who like is a conversationalist in French or has taken high school French, abruptly, all this stuff, there's a proper way to ask, what is your name?
Right.
Rather than the way he did it. So no sense of the structure of the language and having academically studied the language.
Yeah.
But having been around the songs so much, he certainly has the capacity to improvise the lyrics
Okay.
the way all the old singers used to do. Rodney Wolfa, every time he sang "J'ai passé devant ta porte," he'd mix something up and play with it, and Dewey did the same thing, and that's traditional,
Right.
classic, aspect of a oral tradition. But and he can do that, and he has a command of the language as it's sung
Right.
to do all that sort of thing, and he has no lack of confidence to do it.
Yeah.
But it's just to throw in a new word that he'd never heard in a song before, forget it, it's not going to happen. That comes from David, who has studied the language.
I see. But it's not David's first language either. He studied it later in life as well, right?
Correct.
But contrary to Steve, you're suggesting David studied it. David said, I'm going to learn French.
Yeah.
Whereas
Yeah.
Steve absorbed it and picked it up.
Yeah, David is a conversationalist in French.
I see.
Like when we go to France,
Uh-huh.
and David could actually talk with people,
Uh-huh.
and not so with Steve.
Right.
Steve understood a lot more than you'd think he would.
Right. Right. One of the things that's revealed in you obviously resolved the English-French conflict in favor of stepping forward, which I guess they resolve most conflicts in favor of doing. Because now it's
Yeah, but certainly completely within the context of bilingual.
right.
We weren't going to do an English record. We weren't going to translate a French song into English.
Okay.
No way.
Okay, I see.
We weren't going to do any of that cheap